You're listening to Life Inspirations. In the shadows, you and I were created to have a mission in life, a purpose. We were made to make a difference. And all human beings, no matter who you are or where you are, cannot live in the absence of purpose. People must have lifetime pathways that were designed by the hand of God. And if we do not live our God-assigned mission, we will live in what might be called a shadow mission. And over the years, I have discovered quite a remarkable thing, that many people ask this question: what is my mission in life? What is my call? What has God got for me to do? And I find that as the years go by, people don't realize something profound, and that is that they may already be doing what God has put them on earth to do. And I said in the last podcast, your mission starts where you are, not where you think it should be. Otherwise, we can be waiting, and it can seem as though we will never get there, whatever there is supposed to mean. And I'll say it again, start where you are, use what is in your hand now, because God has put those things into your hand and He has put you in the place where He wants you to be. It's all in front of you. And if we don't do this, our lives will drift and go into autopilot. We recently bought a new car that has all the bells and whistles. It has an elaborate form of cruise control. It feels as though you could make a cup of tea while you're driving. Because along with this is lane assist, so the car will automatically stay in the lane if you don't touch the steering wheel, which you're not supposed to do, of course. It even slows down behind other cars, behind a line of traffic, all by itself. And this autopilot cruise control mode in life can mean that we avoid any difficulty, any suffering, anything that we can, just like a river avoids the hardest way to go and goes the easiest route. We can drift into a shadow mission, and it's what we do with our lives when we are on this cruise control life journey. And it consists of the activities toward which I will gravitate if I allow my natural temptations and selfishness to take over. Everybody has a shadow mission. We can easily get into a trivial pursuit sort of game of life. We are all faced with a fork in the road. Shall I go to the right? Shall I go to the left? One way is where God wants us to go. The other way is our shadow mission. There's a great example in Luke 12 where the rich fool in Jesus' story had a clear shadow mission. His was to build bigger barns and lay up plenty of goods for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But his soul was required that night. Carl Jung, whose father was a pastor, used to speak of our shadow side, those patterns of thought and action that betray our deepest values, that lead to regret and guilt. If you watch The Lord of the Rings in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, you see Frodo's mission is to be the ring bearer, to bless Middle-earth by destroying the ring in the fires of doom. That was his mission. But the hardest part of it was not defeating external enemies. The hardest part is renouncing the shadow mission of choosing to claim the ring for himself and seeking his own power and glory. Wow. And pursuing our shadow missions always ends up with despair. And I think of my own life. I've had lots of forks in the road. I've had lots of shadow missions loom up in front of me as I journey that are like billboards or advertising displays that have all the bright lights and look attractive. But I knew over the years that if I pursued any of them, it indeed would be trivial pursuit. For example, I really loved music. I loved listening to it. I had piano lessons when I was a kid, learnt to play the guitar, drove my parents crazy, I think, with chords and constant strumming and riffs. I could have formed bands or sung in pubs, pursued music for my own self, for my own benefit, drifting on towards self-interest. The same thing with sport and recreation. And a classic one for me is this thing called fishing, and I've mentioned it often. And for years, I've just loved the thought of catching fish. And I'm still doing it. But really, to be honest, it's not my mission in life. It's a great hobby, but that's all there is to it. I remember many, many times surf casting off the cliffs at Castle Point in New Zealand. And I would say to myself, this is what life is all about. I love doing this. Putting down crayfish pots. Wonderful. But then the deeper side of me realized that pursuit, if I put my whole life into it, made it my life goal, would lead to despair. It would be a shadow mission. One of the most remarkable stories in the Bible is about Queen Esther, who was a real beauty queen, really. And she was a Jew. She saved her Jewish people from extinction. But her story could have been oh so different. She could have walked the shadow mission way. But Queen Esther's life was no accident, like my life is no accident. She was aware, and her cousin Mordecai was aware, that everything had been set up by the hand of God. He said to her, "Who knows but that you have come to your position for such a time as this?" And as the story goes, we see that she risked her life by approaching the king. He just didn't do that in order to save her people. But what I'm saying is that she didn't have to do that. It was a decision she made. It was a fork in the road. Go one way, she could preserve her life and everything would be sweet. Go another way, she could risk her life but save her people. So my question to you is, what is your position in life? Because you were not an accident. There was a purpose, there was a design, there was an intention when you were born into this world. It could involve your job, your marriage, your tasks as a parent, your friendships. Maybe it involves the neighbourhood where you live or volunteering somewhere. One thing is for sure, this is your time, not some other situation, not tomorrow or yesterday. You see, you don't get to choose your time chooses you. You are where and who you are for a reason. And there's another aspect to this. God also puts people alongside you for a purpose. He put Mordecai alongside Esther. He was her older cousin who was her guardian. So, who is your Mordecai? Someone who knows you well enough to help you identify what God is calling you to do. Who loves you enough to challenge you when you want to shrink back into autopilot. And here's another question. Did Jesus face a shadow mission? I think so. You see, Hebrews tells us that he was tempted in every way. Not some ways, every way. Like us, but was without sin. For Jesus, the shadow mission, listen to this, was to be Messiah without suffering. The great New Testament scholar F.F. Bruce writes, "Time and again the temptation came to him from many directions to choose some less costly way of fulfilling that calling than the way of suffering and death. But he resisted it to the end and set his face steadfastly to accomplish the purpose for which he had come into the world." In the desert, Satan tempted Jesus to achieve his mission without hunger, without pain, and without opposition. And later on, when Jesus told the disciples he must suffer and die, Peter tried to convince him that his suffering was unnecessary. This was the same shadow mission, and the reason that Jesus rebuked Peter so sharply, saying, "Get behind me, Satan." All the way to the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus wrestled with us, praying, "Take this cup from me." He even cried out from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" His great victory was his victory over the temptation of his shadow mission, a Messiah without a cross. And guess what? His victory gave his followers courage to renounce their own shadow missions. And the last thing that I would say, when we do our true mission that God wants us to do, not our shadow mission, he promises in Matthew 28 to be with us always, even to the end of the age. God bless you.